Artificial intelligence is rapidly transforming the world of finance, and one of the most exciting areas is generative AI. Now, these powerful models are like financial detectives sifting through mountains of historical data to uncover hidden patterns and connections. By harnessing this newfound knowledge, generative AI can generate trading signals, identify promising investment opportunities, and even help develop more robust strategies. Today, we will delve into this fascinating world and explore how generative AI is changing the game for investors at all levels. So from London, UK, I have Elemi Atigolo, a managing partner, Generative AI Consulting. Thank you so much for joining us on Business Edge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So generative AI sounds powerful, but can you give some specific examples of how these models are currently being used to develop robust investment strategies?
Yeah, really good question. And you're quite right that generative AI as a whole is very powerful. Now, how these models are actually being utilized inside of the investment and asset management industry is generally in a few areas. So one is in summarization of data. So generative AI does very well in its ability to understand data. And so the more data is actually given, it can be used to bring out different insights in that data. So whether that is reviewing earning calls and bringing out information, reviewing details of financial documentation and bringing out insights that can be used inside of the financial investment industry.
All right, that's actually brilliant coming from you, Elemi. But then are there certain asset classes or probably markets where they are particularly effective, or you would say that this is one size that fits all?
Yes, really great question. So when we look at the different asset classes, what we are seeing is in the areas of equities, in the areas of hedge funds, and also in the digital currency aspect, those areas are quite good for the use of generative AI. And one of the reasons that we see that is because of the inefficiencies in these particular sectors and asset classes. So in the equity sector and also the hedge fund sector, and what we also see in digital currency sector. So they do very well in utilizing generative AI to identify those inefficiencies that can be used to generate alpha.
Well, it's quite interesting the sophistication that generative AI is giving or making available for those who are in need of it. But then I'd like to also look more into the models. Of course, we know that generative AI is quite very, of course, optimal in terms of its delivery. But then can it go beyond identifying patterns and correlations to predict future market movements? Or are they better suited for risk management and just portfolio optimization?
Really great question. So what we are seeing is the use of generative AI with other models as well and other AI technology to be used not just in the data analysis, but also into predictive nature. So being able to synthesize information to then predict what outcomes that could be in stock price, that could be in earning calls, could be in price earnings, for example. So we are seeing the use of generative AI in that environment. So not just in descriptive, but also in predictive and prescriptive aspects.
So probably we need to tie that to how it affects humans who have, of course, been at the vanguard when it comes to securities and their investments. Now, while AI can, as we know it, analyze vast amounts of data, how does it integrate with the experience and intuition of human investors?
Okay, great. What we are actually seeing is the role of generative AI at present is actually used to complement the human capabilities, so not to replace humans. So how we are seeing the use of generative AI in these industries is the ability to provide insights to advisors and the human investors that they can then decide and use that information as a start of their either bottom-up position on identifying particular investment opportunities, as opposed to the generative AI or even large language models being used to actually make the final actionable decision.
That's quite interesting. So are we looking at a future where AI completely replaces human decision making in the market? Like I could just initiate the process, go to sleep and expect generative AI to do all the workings, the calculations, do the predictions, make the decisions for me, and I earn at the end of the day, I smile to the bank and I'm good.
That's really great. You know, the things that we are seeing, some of the developments that we are seeing is in the areas of automation and autonomy. So agents, essentially where financial agents can carry out tasks. However, I believe we are still a little bit away from just sitting back and relaxing. I think that AI can do a lot of those aspects that you mentioned on an autonomous position, but I feel that the final aspects will still be used from a human trigger. There may be some automation in terms of trading aspects that we are currently seeing where automatic trade signals are in place, but I think the full remit from start to finish, I think there will still be the need for human intervention at certain points through the process.
So, Elemi, let's take this back a bit. You might want to agree with me that historical market data can reflect past biases. So, how do generative AI models address these biases to ensure their investment signals are not skewed?
Yeah, really great. And you're quite right that the historical data does have biases. And generative AI itself also has biases because of the way it's actually been designed and trained. Now, what we are seeing are specific data sets, so data sets that have been cleaned, data sets where biases have been removed. And we've also seen data sets that have been developed by diverse teams that can help to ensure that the actual models themselves remove the biases. And then you're able to run these models on the data that can identify biases within inside of the data. By removing that bias, you can then have more of a clean analysis where you're just looking at the facts as opposed to biases that could influence the results.
Part of these biases are the unpredictability of the markets. And of course, it's been said that the markets can be volatile, swinging either ways without the foreknowledge of those within the play or those to be affected by this. So when we have unforeseen events causing major disruptions like geopolitical tensions and what we have in the market and other market dynamics, now how well can the generative AI models handle these issues? Of course, if we're looking at the historical patterns and scaling it down to what obtains now.
Great point. No, you're quite right that when you look at the investment market overall, it's not just linear positions. There are different aspects that have an overall impact. What we do see with the benefit with generative AI is its understanding and its ability to synthesize vast amounts of data. So whether that might be geopolitical data, it could be social media and posts, it could be earning calls. All of that information can help to run predictive analysis, can also run alternative strategies and options, hypothesis examples on what can happen with a particular stock or a particular industry. That can help to provide an investor with information to understand, well, what could happen in different scenarios. And that's where generative AI and also the use of large language models can be very beneficial in this environment.
But it's been speculated that generative AI models can be complex. So how do you think that investors can understand the rationale behind the trading signals generated by AI? Is there a level of understanding that can be achieved, a level of transparency where people are able to interface with these models, interpret it, understand how it plays so that they can make final decisions, of course, with the help of the AI?
Yeah, and that's one of the areas that we are seeing quite a lot with the area of explainability in AI. Now that can be it's quite difficult at the moment, especially with generative AI, because of the way these models have been trained and developed. But we are starting to see different technologies that can either support the use of generative AI, where you can actually see into the model's decision-making process, how it came about its overall outcome. That can be quite beneficial. We are also seeing different models and creations that have been developed that use a different structure, where you have more transparency in the base of the model. So if from the very beginning, there's transparency in the model in terms of how it makes its decisions, and you can see that, that can help with the explainability on the other side. You know, when it comes to any type of decision, especially in investment, it's important to understand how those decisions were made. And that's good for both the investor and also those individuals inside of the space itself.
And I'm still talking about transparency. I'd like to find out, because we see that AI is gradually playing a bigger role in the market now. And of course, should we be concerned about probably issues as regards manipulation? Do you think that these models can be used ethically and responsibly? Because we're not too sure if we have regulatory bodies that can monitor these processes and ensure that they are in line.
Yes, regulation is a key aspect, and the use of ethical considerations. We've seen that in other areas where generative AI is being implemented, and finance is exactly the same, and even more so, even important as well. What we are seeing is regulations start to come in place. We're seeing that across Europe. We are also seeing that in the US and further afield as well. Now, when it comes to regulation, there are some issues in that AI overall is moving at very, very fast pace, and sometimes it's outpacing where regulation is today. And so collaboration between the developers themselves, the developers of the models, those big tech companies, and the regulators can really help with that downward motion to the investors. So ensure that when it comes to the use of generative AI within inside of finance, that it's still ring-fenced within inside a financial regulatory infrastructure. So it doesn't matter if you're utilizing an AI tool, the same aspects of regulation, ethical behavior within inside of finance still needs to be in place, and we are starting to see that now.
All right. Well, talking about penetration and acceptability, we see that generative AI, of course, sounds promising, and quite a lot of people might be wanting to be onboarded on this. But then, of course, it's a technological provision, a technological advancement, but we still need to consider the possibility of accessibility. Is it going to be only for investors, or is primarily the domain of large institutions? But then you would also want to look at it from the angle of rural areas, cosmopolitan areas, urban areas, areas that are well developed, underdeveloped, and all those who do not have internet penetration. Looking at all those bottlenecks and the factors, do you think that generative AI will be able to penetrate and be available for use for these demographics?
Really good point. One of the things that we are seeing at the moment, that yes, it is a lot of the large institutions that have access to the resources. These models take a lot of power to run. And so often you need a lot of the financial resources to be able to run these models. However, what we are seeing is a lot of what they call model as a service, whereby companies and firms and individuals can access these models without having to own the overall infrastructure. And they normally do this on a per token call or per API call ability, so that they can get access to these models. And in terms of more rural areas, we are seeing further development that these use of these models can be utilized in tools that we already use, so mobile phones and so forth. And that can help with the actual distribution of this technology so that it's more available to more people. This is a point in time where AI can be in the hands of the everyday individual, the everyday investor, and we've not seen that in any time in the history.
Okay. Elemi Atigolo, Managing Partner at Generative AI Consulting. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you. Thank you.